Alrighty. Hello, everyone. We are back today with a new episode of The Journey Within. I am your host, Andrea Escobar Logreda, spiritual medium and psychic. So each week we get to connect with different healers, storytellers, and vision holders as they walk us through their journey within dark night of the soul experience and how they were able to transform darkness into light. I am so incredibly honored to be joined by today's guest, Lauren Eliz Love. I'm not even going to dive into her intro because, like I mentioned to her before we started recording, she is a chameleon in the most beautiful way possible. She integrates her personal life and business in such a beautiful way, and I can't wait to share her story today and dive deeper into what she has been working on, her program Heal, and so much more. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you for having me. I love the way, Andrea, you explained what this podcast is about. Like that's so profound and so important to capture and share for people. So the fact that you're doing this work, like thank you. So needed. So needed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think last year I realized we all go through hardships and we were facing it on a collective, but we don't always see what's going on the back end of all these really incredibly successful people unless, they want to share. And a lot of the times I'm listening to something, I'm like, wait, I want to know more. Like, tell me more. So it's fun that I can create a space and share that with the community.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm so grateful for you, for your energy and your time with us. I want to go back to like the beginning, to like little Lauren, and just seeing how you were. Because it's so interesting how as we grow, what we remember changes.
Mm.
And I'm intrigued to see if there's any new revelations with all the magic that you've been doing, especially with Sedona and all of that. So
Yeah. So how far back do you want me to go? Where are we taking this to?
oh man, let's go. Like I'm so deep into inner child right now. So if you want to go that deep, I would
Yeah,
love it.
let's do it. Yeah, let's totally do it. So, okay, cool. I think that first of all, I'll say like to anybody who's listening to this show, like if you're in a dark night of the soul, you're a very spiritual person. It's even if you're not aware of it and life is rocking and rolling and being crazy, sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is just to recognize that it's all a spiritual process and that it's there as a gift. And I did not realize that until maybe 3 years ago. So I have a whole lifetime of like, going through hard stuff and tough shit and feeling like, I don't want to use the word curse, but just that like, you got the shitty end of the stick. I grew up with parents who really didn't fully see me, didn't really understand me. My mom and my dad, just to give you some background, my mom has a lot of trauma. She carries it a lot in the way she parents, always worrying about what's going to go wrong, and keeping me small was really about her trying to keep me safe. But that was really how it showed up in her dynamic, was her kind of telling me not to be too loud, or telling me not to be so opinionated, or telling me not to share too much. And so you see me on Instagram, I love sharing too much, right? Like that's the best. It's awesome. But it was a part of me that was like really rejected growing up. My dad was in the closet and as a gay man, and kept that a secret for a long time. So what I really saw were two parents that really didn't love each other. And the trauma that comes from that, when you watch your mother and your dad not be a sacred container of union, creates a lot of disconnect for us growing up. And so I sought a lot of love from men. I had boyfriends all the time. I wanted somebody to love me so bad. I just wanted somebody to love me. And that kind of led to making poor choices about who I associated with and how I spent my time, and what social circles I felt worthy to be a part of. So it really took me down this path of like rough hardship growing up into my late teens and early 20s. I was raped my freshman year of college, and that was very earth shattering for me, and led to 2 attempted suicides. and a hospitalization because I hadn't really told anybody what happened. And so doctors thought that I was just crazy. They're like, who's this girl who was so happy and now she's so sad? What just gave her medication? And that's really a pattern with the wildness of becoming a woman, right? Like the ups and the downs and the highs and the lows, and wasn't really understood by the people, the adults around me back then. And so, I went on my path, like trying to just fit in and make things kind of the way that I thought they were supposed to be, right? Get a great job, get married, do the white picket fence thing. And I was doing it, but I was doing it from all the wrong places. So when you're seeking validation and uh, pride from other people in your actions, it affects what you do. You're not doing it from a soul-centered space. So of course you attract asshole relationships. Of course you attract terrible jobs because you have a wound of unworthiness that you're not looking at. And that was really what was going on for me. I went into entrepreneurship in 2015 because I was finding personal development and getting my life together and saw all these changes. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a badass. Like, I'm going to teach this. And so, I stepped into building my own brand and then eventually helping business women build their brands. And then I came back kind of full circle when I got chronic Lyme disease this last year and just feeling like I was in near death experience, but it was all because I wasn't living in my truth. And so now in this season, it's about really claiming my sacred creation channel and just allowing messages to come through me and just allowing myself to be of service, however that looks. And so, yeah, that's really where I am. That's where the Lauren of Love brand is going. And it's just been a wild ride.
Oh my God. Wow. It's funny because like you've gone through so much and you talk about it so almost detached at this point. Like it's not even your story. It's more of like, I'm sharing a story of the past. This isn't me. And for me, that's always such like a magical thing because I feel like it's no longer owning you. It's more of like, oh, look at the beautiful gifts that I was given.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're,
Because
go ahead.
oh, what I was gonna say was I remember when you started talking about lines on Instagram,
Yeah.
and I don't think I had ever heard you sound so kind of like, I don't know where to go from here, you
Yeah.
know? And it's so beautiful that you say that now. You're like it literally ended up bringing things full circle because every time that I when you were doing Badass Business Babes and it was like very more into the business aspect, you were the one that got me to tap more into my feminine energy because it wasn't, and I say this with a grain of salt to everyone, but I'm not blonde, blue-eyed. I'm Hispanic, so I struggled a lot with that identity here in the US. And in the wellness culture, it could come off very sometimes, one, this is what it looks like. And for the first time, I'm like, wow, she's making femininity not weak the way that I've literally looked at it for years. And to me, at least from the outside looking in, Lyme's tapped deeper into that.
I
And
feel that.
right, like in your creation has just, it's literally, I feel like before maybe you were creating out of like more of like soul or sacral, and now it's literally heart. I'm talking like that's just what I perceive, but I'm just like, I feel like she's birthing almost like this new version of yourself, but like it's this version that's, I don't know how to describe it. It's just it's been so beautiful to watch
Yeah,
it. So
thank you. And I'd love to speak to that too, because I think, I agree with you with this concept of how the content that I've been creating has shifted ever since the Lyme disease. And really for me, when I was creating prior, it was a lot of the root and a lot of the sacral, right? A lot of that like masculine sort of protector, like here's what's up, hard edge. And while that's still a part of me, it's not the part that leads, right? Like I recognized that for me, this illness, right, that I carried, and this challenge in the body had a deep spiritual and emotional root that I needed to look at. And I think that a lot of people who go on these journeys of healing, whether it's like I have cancer, or I have endometriosis, or I have PCOS, or it doesn't matter what it is, right? I'm overweight, right? Like these journeys of healing the body have a very important emotional and spiritual root to what's going on. And for me, that moment you're talking about where you were like, I saw you showing up and saying, I don't know where to go from here. Just to give your audience background, I was so foggy. I couldn't get out of bed for weeks. I couldn't walk up the stairs. I couldn't drive a car. I got lost going to the grocery store once. Like I really went into this like dark night of the soul. It almost felt like an attack on my body. Like what was happening? And I think anything that we go through that's painful, the being able to love it for what it teaches you, and love it for what it offers you, and love it for the woman it allowed you to become on the other end of that experience, like that's where that separation can come from. When I talk about it and I feel, I don't feel those emotional triggers. And I think separation can be healthy, but there can also be that feeling of like, yeah, this happened to me, but clearly you haven't processed it, and like clearly you haven't moved through it, and you're like, all right, this person has some shit. That was me for probably the first 2 years of my business, because I was talking about my rape trauma. I was talking about being married to a heroin addict, and just like all this stuff that I had been through. And I was talking about it because for the first time I was going against the grain of what my mother said, which was don't talk about things. And I'm like, I'm going to talk about everything. And just like went just so big. And it was from this place of, I was detached, but I still had stuff I needed to look at. I still had things I needed to explore and heal. So thank you for saying that. It means a lot.
Thank you for sharing all of that. And kind of where I wanted to ask you was, do you feel like when you started, because, and kind of to give people a little bit of context, before Badass Business Babes, you had, perfect. Why am I blanking?
What is perfection?
What is perfection? This is literally what I'm like, I've been following you for a minute. Like this was like full circle that this happened.
Wow, you've been here. What is perfection? Holy crap.
Yeah. That's why it was like, this is like, I manifested you. You're here.
Wow. Cool. Awesome, sister.
So like you were doing that, and you dropped a lot. You jumped off a cliff right then, because and if we'll talk a little bit more about this, but you quit corporate, moved in with your boyfriend, because you guys weren't married yet, were you? Wait, no, you moved in with your boyfriend.
Yep.
And I want to ask you this because this was something that I literally wanted to ask you all the time. You're like, based on with your own upbringing, how were you able to receive that from Matt's parents?
Oh my God. I love that nobody's ever asked me this, and it's actually like such a good question because it was hard for me. So yeah, context, right? I was a television news producer at CBS. I was, interviewing famous celebrities on the red carpet and just like living the dream and have this career. And I would tell people what I would do in my job, and people would be so impressed. They would go, wow, Sarah Jessica Parker, wow. Like, and I felt cool until I realized that I actually hated what I did. Like it didn't bring me any joy. Aside from getting approval from other people and looking accomplished, I was overspending because I was so unfulfilled. I was over drinking because I was so unfulfilled. And I had really terrible bosses and, a hard time like feeling happy. And so I remember I came home to Matt and said, like, I think I'm gonna like quit my job and start a blog. What would you think about that? And we kept talking about it, and we came up with this like contingency plan, right? Like, okay, you have a year, we'll pull your 401k, which had maybe like $20,000 in it. So that could last me a year. And I'll pay the bare minimum on all my credit cards, and I'll move in with your parents. And I didn't have a car. I didn't live in Connecticut. It was like a whole new big leap. But for me, it was like the thought of staying where I was one more second was going to kill me. Like I was just not happy at all. And it was like a universal push out the door. And that happens for many of us, because for me, I had always wanted to start my own business. I had always wanted to be a writer and a sharer of my life stories. And I always felt like that was a part of the reason I went through those things, was to share them. So it wasn't like my job got bad and my blog was my last resort. It was more like my job was so bad because the universe was pushing me to do what I really always wanted to do. Right. So moving in with Matt's parents, it brought up a lot for me. First of all, the idea of being financially supported by Matt while I was growing my business brought up a whole bunch of shame, right? A whole bunch of feeling of like, wow, so I'm the woman in the relationship, and I'm at home and I'm not making any money, and I never wanted to be that way, and it's triggering me. And really, I was not allowing myself as a woman to be supported while I did what I loved, right? I didn't give myself permission to say, hey, it's okay to have a partner who sometimes supports you and you sometimes support him. It's not just you supporting him all the time, right? It gets to be equal. So that was hard for me. And then living with Matt's parents brought up a lot, because they have a very good family, like there's no screaming and yelling in the house, and it's very like, she makes dinner every night and we sit around the table. Like she's so beautiful. And his dad is so calm, and my dad would just like yell at anything. So it brought up a lot, and it really was an opportunity for me to come back to being humble and saying, okay, I deserve to be supported. I deserve to find my value outside of how much money I make or what my status in my career is. And I deserve these loving relationships that are safe and supportive. So that was really big for me. It was huge, huge.
I remember once there was, in one thing you were saying that you were like at the grocery store shopping and you couldn't pay for pads or something. And when you were saying that, my next question was like, how are you living with them? I literally could not. I'd be too. So that's why I've been trying to ask you that.
Yeah. I mean, I
God.
was in such financial poverty. I remember like going home to my mom. I was, and I was at an age where it was like not cute to rely on your parents anymore. Like I was like 26, right? And so it was that point where it was like everybody else was getting established. Everybody else was taking all these big steps of, oh, we got our house, or we're getting married, or we're having a baby. And I was like crashing on a mattress on the floor. Like it just felt like a lot of shame of failure for me, and like going back to square one. And yeah, it's funny, like in moments like that where we're like humbled and kind of forced to either ask for support or rely on other people, or maybe we've had this story of just not having what we want in our life. There has to come a point where you make a decision to say, all right, I'm here, but I'm never coming back. Let's go. Right. And just plow forward and look forward. And so that was like a big practice for me. And like, yeah, I'm here. I have holes in my leggings. I have to put my Target order on two separate cards because I'm almost maxed out on my credit card. And I have to ask Matt to buy things for me because I don't have the money for it. Like it was just so humbling. And, that was a big drive for me when I started to create Business Babe out of What is Perfection, because financial security is not something that we should be chasing all of our lives. It's something that we can have when we show up and do this other work. But that was why I became so passionate about helping business women, because if you have a gift and you have something that you love to do, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be able to create freedom for yourself and make money doing what you love. So that's how that happened.
Wow. Well, that's beautiful, because you got basically inspired by that kind of rock bottom dark night
Right.
for that. So wait, have you literally had like a dark night create?
Yeah. So it's always been, yeah, every single turn was sparked by some rock bottom moment of, and I'm not sure, I wouldn't say going from what is perfection to business babe was necessarily that, but certainly going from business babe to Lauren of Love was that dark night of the soul journey of like returning home and becoming a woman who can show up without masks, you know, and just be like, here I am, this is what I do, take it or leave it, like, you know, and not feel like I need to label myself or identify myself as something. Like I started to just know that I was enough in what I was doing regardless of what it was branded as.
Wow, that's so beautiful, because I feel like when you are in the space of content creation for so long, it's so easy to identify as that, and getting out of that space can be really ego triggering.
Well, I mean, even when I left corporate, I was like, who am I if I'm not a successful television producer? And that's really, I think, what the universe does is when we have this like attachment to stuff,
Mhm.
you know, it shines light on that and says, well, why are you attached to this?
Oh yeah, definitely. I feel like what we don't know, I always laugh because lately it's been appearing, stop thinking you know more. Shut
Yeah.
up. You're human. Literally stop thinking you know more. And I kind of have to take a step back and be like, you're right. I
Yeah.
don't know more. I don't know anything. So it is really beautiful. I would love to know what kind of went through. So you started talking about your journey with alcohol and how you were drinking way too much. And this was, I'm really bad with dates, but this was still when you were still in Badass Business Babe.
Yes.
And it was right before you went to Costa Rica to do ayahuasca, and you were kind of talking about all of this. And I remember kind of, for me, I've had addiction and alcohol in the past, and plant medicine started to call to me 3 years ago. And there was a lot of shadow around, well, I have an addictive personality. Like, is this okay? And it was hilarious because I literally was looking for people in the space, and I'm like, who is that I can relate to on that aspect? But they're talking about plant medicine and they're not saying it makes you less spiritual, or because there can be like a light and darkness to that.
Correct.
And then you talked about it, and Catherine Zakina talked about it. I'm like, wait, she's not about drugs. Like, it was just this like invitation. And I had literally, I wanted to ask him, like, did anything come up around that?
Yeah, I would, you know, and this is like a lesson for everybody, explore your dogma of like what we like put on certain things, like dogma, just as an example, like religion has a lot of dogma. There's like a lot of like, well, you can't be this, but you can be that, or like you have to drink the wine this way, you got to bless yourself this way and just follow this structure, right? Like there's a lot of like rules of what things are supposed to be. And this like real important spiritual lesson that's kind of circulating the media right now, or not the media, but like Instagram, it's question everything,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Question everything. And yes, this is true. And question your own beliefs and your own stories around things that say this is bad or this is good, right? This duality world we live in where we say, well, this is what a spiritual person looks like, but okay, if you eat meat or if you smoke alcohol or smoke alcohol, if you smoke cigarettes, drink alcohol or whatever, smoke an alcohol,
Yeah.
then you're not spiritual, right? You can't be spiritual when you do those things. And so for me, plant medicine came up because my father actually is very, he won't say this, but I will say he was very against it. He's very uncomfortable with it. It makes him, it's unorthodox is like what he says. And to his knowledge and to what he's aware of, yes, you know, this is very unfamiliar territory. I had to really do a good job of recognizing and separating what other people's beliefs were about stuff versus what was my own, and really getting clear with my body of like, okay, if I have resistance to this thing, and I think it's bad, or I think like tantric yoga, right? That's a great example. I was like, fuck no, like tantra, what? Like this is kundalini, huh? Like I was just like, no, I don't want to do that. And it was because I had this dogma around sexuality and self-accentuality and expression as a woman. And so, you know, we carry these things, especially like with alcohol. At the root of it, whatever you're doing, it just needs to be in right relationship, right? So if you think about somebody who has a piece of cake every now and then, and she makes it a big, beautiful ordeal, and she put it on a beautiful plate, and she plays French music, and she's just enjoying it, and she's savoring it, that's in right relation. But if you're gonna go eat a whole box of Twinkies in your bed every Tuesday, you know, we're not in right relationship anymore, you know? And so everything is sacred. Everything is a ceremony, even having a glass of wine. How can you do that with intention? How can you do that with respect for yourself? And how can you use plants as a way to help you expand your consciousness? Right? That's what this is all about. So if you're having a drink because, you know, for me in the past when I struggled with alcohol, I was drinking because I had so much anxiety in my body and I was trying to shut it off. And so I'm not using the medicine correctly. Sacred wine medicine, when you think about like, you go to like the church analogy, right? Let's drink wine. It's a sacred drink. It's something to be really honored. But when you're drinking it because you can't shut your body off, and you're drinking it because you have demons or stories or stresses that you're not looking at, you're now using this sacred medicine to avoid. And so again, it's like being in right relationship. At the end of the day, how am I using this? Instagram, Facebook, same fucking thing, right? How can I use this in right relation? That's it. Yeah.
I love that right relation. It applies to literally everything.
Totally.
Literally everything.
100%, like your partnership, right? How am I looking for love right now? Is that in right relation? Or is it because I'm like craving something that I'm not learning how to give to myself, right? Am I codependent because I don't know how to find wholeness within me, right? So yeah, right relationship. And with plant medicine too, there was like this huge fear of judgment. Like I started doing these things where I smoke a CBD joint and I just like talk, right? I just did my first one a couple yesterday or today. And huge fears, like, oh my God, people are gonna think I'm just fucking getting high and like just going crazy and documenting it, and I had huge fears around that. So also being able to recognize the fears and the resistance you have, is it because you're scared of judgment? Is it because you're scared of what somebody's going to say or what they're not going to say or how they're going to react? And that is just a sign that if that's what you're worried about, you're probably just letting your fear win and you need to go do this thing anyway. So
thank you for sharing about the literally the recording that you did either today or yesterday, because I feel like it is, I even go through that. I've like tried to keep the world separate. I'm like, my spiritual side here, and then this plant medicine woman here. And I laughed at myself because I'm like, I don't even know who I am, because I'm scared to show up in the spiritual community fully as myself, because so many people have said that cannabis is bad, hemp is bad, this is bad. It's like watching TV is bad. And I'm like, but it goes back to what are you doing? And I had to really get down and kind of talk to myself, because that was something my guides were asking me. They're like, you're not 18 distracting yourself with alcohol and cocaine.
right.
It's time for you to acknowledge that.
Right.
You are now just going on a hike and deciding that you want to smoke a joint. There's nothing wrong if that's how you want to connect with nature and deeper with yourself.
Oh, dude. And ganja medicine with the earth is so profound. Like sometimes I'll smoke and I'll see faces in the trees, right? Or I'll see like the birds differently. And it just kind of brings you into this very mystical energy. And the thing is like, I always remember the plants are our allies, right? They're our teachers and they're our friends. They're not, unfortunately, a lot of the dogma we carry is around like the drug industry and how we've been sort of led to believe, like we could go back, I think, to like the Reagan years, right? Where we were just, every drug was demonized and every drug was classified as the same and it was all terrible. And what we're now learning is these plant medicines are actually great allies. They're great teachers and they're great ways of enhancing our human experience and alleviating some of the human experience that holds us back from feeling great, you know? Yeah, so I think plants are here as our allies to help us and to teach us. So gotta
Oh
love
man,
them.
you definitely so much respect for them. I want to ask you, you felt called by Mother Ayahuasca, like she was calling to you. And I'm asking because right now, and I want to, before we jump into this, make a preface to everyone. I love plant medicine. Literally, like, I want to shout it from the rooftops. Trust me, I would. But I also think it's when you are ready, not because your friend is ready, your boyfriend is ready, your girlfriend, your friend. It's not that.
Right.
I haven't felt called by Mother Ayahuasca. Everyone talks about it. I'm like, oh my God, tell me about your experience. And I'm so there for it. But when they're like, what about you? No. What do you mean? No? I'm like, hasn't called.
Yeah.
Psilocybin. She calls to me all the time. She's like, hey, you come here. But I haven't. And again, combo is another one that you're so passionate about. But I really would love for you to kind of hit on that because every time that you talk about a little bit of your experience, you're so, I felt the calling. It wasn't because everyone else was jumping on it. It was literally a soul pull for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to know like what sorry, so my mind's going, I'll tell you where my mind is. I'm like, which medicine do I talk about? Because I like love all these medicines. Like, they're all different calling experiences, you know, like one led to another. And what's really funny is a lot of these medicines, my initial reaction when I heard about them or was going to receive them was like, oh, fuck no. Right. A
Oh,
lot of them, like the first time I learned what ayahuasca was, I'm like, this is awful. Like, what? Like, why? Like, I don't understand. You like let yourself go crazy and you puke in a bucket and you poop a lot. Like, that sounds awful. And so I was so deterrent from it and so pushed away. But at the same time, I had this curiosity where I just kept kind of like being curious when I heard other people were doing it and then going to watch their videos or going to talk about their experiences. And I was like, oh, this is so interesting, right? So my resistance turned to curiosity from a distance, right?
okay.
I'm like, oh yeah, that's interesting, but still no for me, like, and then what happened for me was I was having, this is really how everything unfolded. I had never done any psychoactive drugs and actually psychoactive, any psychedelic
Alex,
drugs.
okay.
That's the right way. I've done plenty of drugs, but I hadn't done mushrooms or acid growing up. Like I didn't have
Okay.
any playful relationship with those medicines. Like I never experienced it because the thought of giving up control and like seeing different things and being like, am I going to be aware that I'm seeing different things or am I going to think they're real and freak out? Like I was so scared of that and like what that would look like. Um, my friend Stephanie had been sitting with mushrooms for a long time. She's like a deep mushroom mama and like so in her study, she loves the mushrooms. And so she offered to hold space for my husband and I to sit in and experience together. And that was my first ever take, ever having. And it was so, it was like, okay, well, if I am going to do ayahuasca one day, let me start with something a little bit lighter, like and mushrooms seem to be the thing, so let me do it. And it was incredible. Like my heart opened and I had these beautiful breakthroughs about my marriage and we are so loving and it was just, it was incredible. And then my friends and I, we all just felt like we wanted to take the step together to all go and do that journey. And so ayahuasca will call you in many different ways. She'll call you by constantly showing up in your energetic field, whether that's like people talking about it or podcast episodes where people, whatever. Maybe this is one of those moments for somebody who's listening, right? Like here she is. So she'll show up a lot like that. Uh, and then she'll also show up in your dreams. So sometimes she'll show up as I see her as a snake or a jaguar, or sometimes I see her as a spider. But it's usually just one of those three. and you'll start to feel her energy working through you in your dreams. And so it's a sign that like, hey, all right, like she's calling you. So that was how that came up. And then from there, I'm a projector by human design.
Okay.
So that means that my job is to wait for the invitation. And so everything, mushrooms, combo, my bufo ceremony, my hot base, everything has been about just receiving the invitation and going, okay, I think I'm ready now. So yeah.
Oh,
What are you shocked about that I did bufo? I haven't really talked about it too much.
That mainly, I'm like, I kind of want to go down that rabbit hole because you haven't talked about it that much, but more of it's, you're a projector, and this is me like right now forgetting that there's that I'm literally recording because I'm like but you're a projector, but I feel like the energy that I've always perceived is very like fiery and just like, I'm going to go after it. So hearing you literally say that, I was like, oh my God, it's such a beautiful place of surrender. And especially talking about plant medicine, I don't know, I just think that's such a magical like relationship that you've almost
like I've let it flow. So like I was never thinking of doing combo, but my friend Catherine, she said to me, I feel like combo would be really good for you. And when I got that download, that was when I was thinking about it like a couple minutes before she even said it. And I'm like, oh, I was thinking about it. Now she's saying it. All right, I hear you. And I started to see frogs everywhere. And so that was also like a big thing. And then with my bufo ceremony, it was the same. It was like, okay, I hear people talking about it a lot, and I'm seeing toads everywhere, and all right, like I guess it's time. So, just allowing it to unfold for you, following the curiosity, being detached from, the story that says, well, it should be ayahuasca because that's what everybody else is doing, or, it should be combo because of this. Like, just let the medicine guide you and do what you are called to do. Your intuition knows.
Wow. How was that?
Bufo?
How was Bufo? I've heard it's like
Wild.
Literally out of this like plane wild.
Yes. It was for me, it was the most healing ceremony I've ever had in my entire life. It was a direct connection to divine consciousness, a full experience of it within my entire being. And a safe space to release a lot of trauma. Like I had a full-blown exorcism, like screaming and fighting it out, and like, it was crazy, but it was like the most beautiful thing in the entire world. And it's so sacred. I haven't actually like recorded or talked about it too much because it was just so beautiful. And just let the medicine call you. Let it call you. I spent years like at one point I was so mentally unwell. I was taking Adderall, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication, and antipsychotics all at once for several years. Like I did not know how to feel safe in my emotional body at all. And I believe that the reason that I've been able to cure my mental health and to heal all of this has been because of these medicines. I don't think, and knowing how to use them to your benefit for healing trauma is so special and so intimate. Some people use these medicines just because they want to get high in the woods and see things, and other people are like, well, I want a beautiful experience, but I also want to like uproot, and I want to reclaim, and I want to release. And so these medicines are powerful for that.
I love that you're saying that because it's almost like I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was 18. And so that was one of the reasons why I resonated so much with your story. And I've been on every med in the book. Yeah. And when I say that it was a blessing and a curse, and I try to be mindful with that curse, but I hated it. It literally put me on the floor, but it also woke me up where I can unsee things. So like now I'll have conversations with people and they're trying to come, and I'm like, no, like, no, it is. I'm like, no, that's your very limited perspective.
Right.
And that's great that you're there, but no. And I realized it is that I was put in a situation where when you tell me this is the answer, I'm like, okay, that was your answer. Let me go find 3 more that resonate with me.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
And to be true on that point, not everybody lands with the concept of plant medicine. And some people will say, oh, well, that's good for you, but I'm gonna go over here. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I don't think there's any one right way to heal our lives. I think it's about allowing what's presented to you to guide you.
ooh, yeah,
And that's it.
definitely. So I want to bring it full circle to Sedona because you went there, had a spiritual, like that was your first time that you were like, oh my God, connection to something bigger than me. You and Matt got married. Like this is such a special place. You did a lot of your healing there.
Yeah.
And are you guys still relocating to Sedona?
Yeah, we're gonna relocate and we're running retreats there now too. So it's so cool. Yeah, Sedona is like freaking powerful. Powerful medicine. There's this like old school sort of myth that,
Mhm.
back in the really, really early days of our planet, Sedona was known as the hospital. And it was not a one particular tribe owned this land. It was like all the tribes lived kind of around it. And then they would come together to Sedona when they needed healing, whether that was like healing between each other or healing for themselves. And, Sedona there's such a powerful medicine there for people who are wanting to heal and also wanting to be tapped into something really healing in the process. The stories I've heard of people who have healed in Sedona is just insane. Like I'm one of many. And so it's cool because I didn't really know why I was going there. I was so sick and just got this download from the universe of like, just go to Sedona, just go. And that was so scary. But yeah, she's really special to me. I had my first awakening there in 2012. And ever since then, like, she's just been such a sacred part of my life. That land is so sacred.
Oh, that's so beautiful that it's kind of coming back to where it all started. Like with heal and it's literally so magical to kind of see literally the full circle come together. But then that's when you realize it's not a circle because something else will come.
Right?
And then you're like,
So
okay, this is a new wave.
I know. It's so true.
I want to pivot on to heal your newest baby. And because it literally like gonna say this to everyone. I have watched her when she talks about all of her launches and she gets excited about all of them. But this one's been different. The way that you express yourself and just like, okay, this is also something I needed to say. You shape shifted since you went to Sedona.
I've heard that.
I needed to tell you that because I'm like, I didn't know if it was just I saw it on Instagram sometimes,
Yeah.
but I'm like, I literally was looking at a picture that I have of you that's really old, and I was like, no, she definitely shape shifted.
Thank you for saying that. I feel that. I feel that deeply. Yes, you said you wanted to talk about heal.
So
Mhm.
what take us a little bit back to when you decided to let Matt know that you were going to stay in Sedona longer, and kind of that to the birth of Heal.
Sure. Yeah, so my plan originally was 3 months, just as long, spend 3 months there. And it ended up being 7 because there was just so much work that I had to do. And it felt like every week I was exploring some new layer of my trauma. And every week I was going into some sort of ceremonial experience and learning new things about myself. And I I think what I've realized now, because you had said this, like sometimes when you go back and look at things, you like see them different.
Yeah.
I realize now that when I ran this retreat in Los Angeles, like 2 or 3 years ago, I had a moment where I realized that I was meant to be in the spiritual teaching space. and not in the business teaching space. And it was this real moment of like scariness and confusion and also resistance, because I didn't want to like financially put myself in jeopardy by shifting and pivoting. And so what I did was I hid for a long time. I hid from making that choice, and I continued to run programs that were just for business women, when in reality, I really wanted to help women heal. And I always knew that. And so I got really sick because I was ignoring my truth, and I wasn't listening to what I was living an inauthentic life and not being in alignment with what my soul really wanted me to do. And so in that sickness, I had a lot of healing come up around my sexual trauma. I had a lot of healing come up around my worthiness and my connection to spirit and my father and my mother, and just like healing all these certain things. And I started to realize that my life was changing, that now it wasn't about healing my body because I was physically ill. It was about all this other stuff underneath. And the more I did that work, the more I actually saw my body get healthier. I have no symptoms to this day. Like everything is gone. It's incredible. It's a beautiful miracle. And I think the reason it happened was because I was willing to do all that inner work. And so, I started to get frustrated in the business space because I saw so many women who had like all these layers of inner work that were too wrapped up in just teaching marketing, and you'd watch them and be like, you're so in your shadow. Like I see what's going on. Like go drink some ayahuasca, go look at yourself. And then, you see it all with like cancel culture, and it's the same thing, like people who are just not as awake as we had hoped. And so that's our job, is to become fully awakened in this lifetime. And as I was doing that, my teacher, my combo teacher, said something to me. We're right outside of my porch, and he said, you just need to figure out what it is you really want to do. And I was like, oh, that's it. Like that's I gotta figure out what I really want to do. Okay. And so I realized what I really wanted to do is help women heal. And then I kind of made this sort of promise to the universe of like, okay, well, if you heal me of all these symptoms and everything's gone, I will teach whatever comes through from you. I will teach whatever this is supposed to be. And so this beautiful method of heal became birthed, which is this 12-step. We talk about like the 12 steps of sobriety, right? But this is so different. That there's these 12 steps that I've been working through with my clients. We're on step 2 right now, which is the art of really stepping into healing and feeling safe, right? And knowing that it's safe to look at shadow, it's safe to look at trauma, it's safe to go into the past experiences. And yeah, it's just been, I had a girl message me telling me that she just ended a long abusive relationship 2 weeks into the program. She had the courage to finally do it. Another woman going after her dream job and finally deciding that she's going to take the leap. And, just seeing women who have wanted these changes in their physical world for a while and have maybe been conditioned to believe that they can't happen, or that they shouldn't happen, right? Because it's not safe, whatever it may be. And so, yeah, we've been healing together, and there's like ceremonial work involved, which is really beautiful. I get to bring that in, and just having fun sharing the beautiful transmission of whatever this is above me, and just letting it out into the world.
Oh man, that's so incredible. And thank you for stepping out, because I'm sure that it was scary.
Yeah.
But it's so beautiful to see this, like this you. It's
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's yeah.
Here,
It's
it's like
yeah.
in my heart, like I feel that. And yeah, it's funny, all those years ago I picked the last name Love when I got divorced, and so now all these years later it's full circle, like you gotta live in your heart. And yeah, that's what I've been dedicated to doing in this chapter of my life, even when it feels hard. And it's okay if it feels hard. It's normal when you grow to have things feel hard. So yeah, it's just been beautiful. I'm so blessed.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
that reminder that it is
Yeah,
okay for it to feel hard.
totally.
What would you tell yourself when you were in the midst of everything with Lyme and you were just like, I can't see, like the waters just keeps coming, and I'm like literally drowning in salt water. When are the waves going to stop? Because I know a lot of people are there, and Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for anybody who's in that moment, the the anxiety or the stress that we feel generally in those environments and situations is mostly caused by our deep fear that that moment will be forever. And so we think about where our life is going to be in 5 years in this pain, and 10 years in this pain, and even tomorrow in this pain. We're constantly focused on how where we are right now is going to negatively impact the rest of our path. And what I really wish I did a better job of back then was just giving myself permission to be aware that this was temporary. This was temporary, and it was here to teach me something. And if I took pause and said, okay, what is this here to teach me, and not fall into the victim consciousness of like, poor me, I'm going through this. Oh my God, it's so hard for me. I did that. I had a lot of attachment to my suffering. How many plant medicines did I do, plant ceremonies that were so hard? And I just had this breakthrough after like 4 or 5 of them. I'm like, man, I'm so addicted to my suffering. Like it's always got to be hard. It always has to feel difficult. I always got to get my fear. Like I'm just so addicted to this, and I just don't want it anymore. Yeah, yeah. It's just funny. It's just so funny how we live versus how we're truly capable of living, and just seeing how different that can. We don't have to live in our suffering. We don't have to live in the burden of victimhood. And when we make that choice to empower ourselves and say like, okay, I'm the creator of my reality, I'm the creator of my destiny, I'm creating something different, I'm going to figure it out, I'm getting to my outcome. When we're in that state, we're in that like warrior goddess energy, and that's really empowering and helpful. So yeah, but I got out, so whatever I did, I'm just happy I did it. I'm sure I could have done things a little bit more gracefully and nourishing for myself in the process, but it was all learning moments.
Thank you for that. It's true what you're saying. We hold on to kind of the present pain and
Mhm.
and kind of what you said about being addicted to that struggle, the pain, our own suffering. That was something I actually started to look at in the last like year with myself. And it wasn't until everything that happened last year with BLM that I had to face a shadow that I didn't even know existed. My family is Colombian and they immigrated to the US. So what I heard a lot growing up was you have to work like a Black person to live like a white person. And I didn't realize how racist that is on one level, but also how engraved it was that I don't deserve to allow things to come easily into my life. Like I have to struggle and hustle, and like it needs to be difficult. And I was in a state of surrender last year, and I fully remember just saying, what do I do from here? And they were like, stop trying to make it difficult. And I'm like, I'm not. And I had this flashback of every single time, like, yeah, you choose every single time the most difficult part. And it was almost kind of like watching a movie of my life, and then being able to realize, wow, I could decide if I want to continue to repeat what I was taught, or if I want to say, this isn't me, this is your story, and I don't identify with that.
Yeah, and
So
that's where the separation and the reparenting is so powerful, right? To be able to say like, okay, I see this pattern for me, and that old version of me, I love her so much, she's so beautiful, she works so hard, good for
yeah.
you, but now I'm going to move forward and create this new identity. And I think that component is something Wayne Dyer talked about a lot. I remember one of his speeches that I was watching,
Mm-hmm.
he put like all these different photos of himself up on the screen from all these different ages of life, and he goes, you tell me that's the same body, right? I've never had one body. I don't have one body, right? Like look at me, my body as a baby, look at my body as a teenager, look at my body here as an elder. Like you know, and that evolution that our bodies go through, we have to also give ourselves permission to go through that emotional evolution as well, of being able to create the separation of what once was to create what we actually really want.
Which is powerful when you can get into that kind of place of recognizing that and just having that awareness.
Totally.
So kind of bringing this into towards an end, where do you feel like you learned the biggest lesson? And I know that's like such a, I've learned lessons and everything, but it's more of just like looking back where you're just like, I didn't think I needed this to happen, but now it needed to happen. Like, it's more of like that needed to happen in order for me to be here. Like one of those very, like, I'll share this. I was drugged and raped, and people always tell me, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, oh, I'm not. And they're like, why? And I'm like, I needed that to happen so that I could reclaim my power back. So I'm not sorry that it happened. It took a lot for me to get there, but it's in a place where I'm like, I needed to literally have that happen so that I could say, this isn't me. Give me back who I am. So
that's about, and really that's a profound lesson in learning how to bring things to the light, right? Every experience we have, we can bring it to the dark side, we can bring it to the light side. And by saying, okay, I see the gift in this. Yeah, it's funny. I've never met a rape victim or a sexual assault victim who ever said, I'm sorry to me, because we know, right? You don't have to tell me sorry, right? You don't have to tell me sorry. Not from that space of like,
I'm like,
yeah, but just being able to say these things are a gift. And your question of like, what was a moment of that for you? Every moment of my fucking life, like everything I've been through, I don't think there's a single thing that I can't connect a dot to, right? Steve Jobs says, you have no idea how all these dots connect until you're at the end of your life looking back and you see it and it all makes sense. And that's how I feel for me. Everything, all the way back to childhood, everything was there on purpose. And if you're listening to this and like you're not there, right? And you're like, well, good, easy for you to say, right? Like that's okay too, right? There are many moments of my life where I was not fully ready to claim my peace, and I felt like I couldn't, because I was stuck and trapped in the old pain and the old suffering. So, you know, that's it, that wherever you are, there you are. And it takes as long as it takes, and just giving yourself gentleness in the process, because it's a long process, but you can get there and see all these beautiful elements of your life and how they're all connected.
Oh yeah. And I kind of want to say, jumping on that, I'm not saying that I own everything that I have. Trust me. There's still a lot of shit that literally, I was talking to someone yesterday and they're like, did you just like see your shadow come out? And I'm like, no, but thank you for pointing it out. So it's not like I'm owned and integrated everything.
Dude. And I'll speak to that too, because, you know, it's so funny. When I came home, there were triggers with my relationship that I could see like really clearly, like certain things I was doing or certain ways I was behaving. And I snapped at Matt. And then after like 20 minutes, I was still in denial that I was rude. I was like, no, I wasn't. I was so nice. And then I came back into his room. I'm like, you're right. I fucked up. Like, I see it. So some, you know, it's just a process of, it's just all learning. It's all beautiful.
It is all learning, and it is all beautiful. And it's great when we can hold space for that without judgment. And I think that's the one thing that I wish everyone could. I still do. I still judge myself, but it's like, if we could really get to a place of just observing without putting good or bad to anything. And I mean everything. Like, the sun can be good or bad, just like fire can be good or bad. It's just accepting it as fire, the sun, not putting all these entities behind it. I just got a selfish question that I wanted to ask. How did you go from, you guys were living together, you took 7 months to yourself, and then going back to that shared space?
Hard. It was hard. It was a lot of realizing where I dim my light because of old stories, not necessarily because of him.
Yeah.
Reasons where I would cling to him to have a good day instead of learning how to create it by myself, that codependency pattern. So like a lot of that stuff came up when I got home because I had done such a good job of cultivating independence and then bringing it home. It was perfect because it was like the training wheels were off, and in Sedona the training wheels were on because I had all these plant medicines and I had this community and I had private time. And then here I needed to be able to say, oh, I'm going to make my own ceremony, or oh, I'm going to take time for myself, right? And not fall back into old ways. So yeah, but it was beautiful.
Oh, thank you for that. I think a lot of people, I mean, I've never lived with anyone, and I'm now staying with a friend, and
It's hard.
I literally have said every single day, I'm like, universe, I really don't regret it, but thank you for this very twisted lesson of patience and learning to live with people. So we have a little tradition here on the Journey Within. I like to cosmically profile everyone because as a Gemini, I'm super curious and it's just fun for me. I know you know your moon rising. I'm like, do you? I know you know your moon rising and your sun sign.
I'm a Capricorn and I am a Taurus moon and I'm a Leo rising.
That Leo rising.
That's the fire.
Literally, that's the fire I see. Like, yeah.
Totally.
And then, do you know where your North Node is by any chance?
I used to. Oh my gosh. No, I'm not going to know off the top of my head anymore.
I'm going to email you because right now I'm literally getting Taurus for some reason.
Okay, we'll check it out.
And I'm just like curious, but just with everything that's been changing, I'm kind of like intrigued as to where your South Node was and where your North Node and just like where it goes. All right. And then where can people find you? I know you love playing on Instagram.
I love Instagram. I'm doing these like thought transmissions now, which we talked about. So you can check me out at Lauren of Love and the Lauren of Love podcast, of course, and laurenoflove.com.
Awesome. And then you have a retreat. What do you want? Just like
little? Oh no, yeah. September, end of September into early October, and it is a ceremony container, a 4-day experience of transformation related to soul expansion. And there are 4 ceremonies within that container. And we will not be using psychedelic plants, but we will be having ceremonies and it will be amazing. And there's all this healing work around it. So if anybody wants to check out the schedule, that's also on laurenoflove.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us and sharing your time and energy with us. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Thank you. Well, everyone, I will see you guys next week. Hope you have a magical rest of your day. Bye.